First tonight, Eyewitness News is your local election headquarters, and we just hosted a debate between two high-profile candidates running for U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. Good evening, I'm Shannon Heggie.
And I'm Mike Montecalvo. Congressman Joe Kennedy is challenging Senator Ed Markey for the seat he's held since 2013. This is the only primary debate between the pair scheduled for southeastern Massachusetts, which could be a key battleground area in the election. It was moderated by Target 12 investigator Tim White and politics editor Ted Nesi. And we have team coverage tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Caroline Goggin is standing by with debate reaction from a UMass Dartmouth political science professor. But first, let's send it out to Target 12 investigator STEPH MACHADO for a wrap-up of tonight's debate. Steph?
Mike and Shannon, at times during this race, it's been difficult to distinguish between the two Democrats who largely agree on most policies. But tonight, they criticized each other for their records and past choices.
Congressman Kennedy is a progressive in name only.
Right out of the gate, Senator Ed Markey going after Congressman Joe Kennedy after Tim White asked about his yes vote on the 1994 tough on crime bill that experts believe has led to more Black Americans incarcerated.
Do you now regret supporting that bill?
That included a ban on assault weapons. It included the institution of the Violence Against Women's Act. Very important changes. It also had in it sentencing guidelines that were totally wrong and have to be changed. But let me also say this, that when Congressman Kennedy became a lawyer, he decided to go to work for the most conservative Republican right-wing district attorney in Massachusetts in a generation.
Kennedy worked as a prosecutor in Cape and Islands DA Michael O'Keefe's office after graduating Harvard Law.
We of course had disagreements. I find it a little surprising, though, given what Senator Markey's stance has been on the need for what he says about criminal justice reform, that he's now actually advocating to say that you shouldn't have progressive prosecutors work in offices. This isn't just a question of Senator Markey's vote for a 1994 crime bill, but the long-standing record of judgment that he's shown. When he came into office, he actually opposed the integration of the Boston public school system.
On recent calls to defund the police amid outrage over the police killing of George Floyd, both Markey and Kennedy said they would reallocate some funds from police departments to other services like education and mental health. The two gave these explanations for their support of the protests in the wake of Floyd's death, despite public health restrictions against mass gatherings.
That sickness also needs to heal. That wound needs sunlight and air. And what we have seen on those streets are individuals in anguish and in pain and anger, the likes of which, look, I will never know.
To have a man murdered, have a brother, a father, a son murdered, requires the level of response which we're seeing in our country. The soul of our country is on fire.
The two Democrats were also asked whether they would support unemployment benefits for undocumented immigrants during this pandemic. Kennedy said yes. Markey said he supports a $2,000 monthly stimulus payment for all instead. I'm Steph MACHADO, Eyewitness News.
Steph, thank you. Prior to the coronavirus pandemic, the plan was to host tonight's debate with an audience at UMass Dartmouth. And that's where we find Caroline Goggin, who joins us now with reaction and analysis from a UMass political science professor. Caroline?
Tonight, I watched the debate with UMass Dartmouth professor Shannon Jenkins. After it was over, she told me she couldn't pick a clear winner. In fact, she said the two candidates didn't do enough to differentiate themselves. Here's part of our sit-down interview with her that aired live on WPRI.com right after the debate.
I think both of the candidates faced some tough questions, and they stumbled a little bit on some of them. I think Representative Kennedy maybe still hasn't quite figured out his answer to why voters should vote for him, and I think Senator Markey maybe floundered a bit on questions about campaign finance.
Well, Markey had said at one point, leadership requires bipartisanship, and he was talking about the Green New Deal. He was talking about several bills that he's worked to get passed. But at the same time, he said that Kennedy hasn't gotten any of his own bills passed. Does that matter to a voter?
You know, I think it matters in somewhat in a primary, right? In a certain sense, in a general election, you have party labels for voters to help differentiate between the two candidates. And I think we saw this, we talked about in the rapid fire, that the two candidates literally agreed on every single issue. And so it's very hard to find policy differences between the candidates. I think at one point, it devolved into a debate of who trusted Trump last, right? And so they're arguing who's more committed to the same position, that perhaps then accomplishments can matter, because how else are you going to differentiate between these two candidates right now? And that, I think, is a little bit of a struggle for the Kennedy campaign. I do know that there are a lot of people, and we talked about this in the context of campaign finance, that, you know, Congressman Kennedy went after Senator Markey for accepting donations from non-progressive donors. And he said, well, why didn't you give that money to other races where it might be needed more? And I can see Democratic primary voters saying, well, he wouldn't need to do that if you weren't primarying him.
Jenkins said she also found it interesting that Senator Markey appeared so fired up at times during tonight's debate. She said that indicated to her that he believes this is a tight race. And she said that could make things very interesting over the next few months. Reporting at UMass Dartmouth, I'm Caroline Goggin, Eyewitness News.
Caroline, thank you. And you can watch the full debate right now on WPRI.com. You can also see what people have tweeted about the debate and get in on the conversation using the hashtag WPRI12debate.
And the winner of September's Democratic primary will face the winner of the Republican primary between candidates Kevin O'Connor and Shiva Ayyadurai in November.